Getting you all set for that drive home. Let's just start the show. Here's John and Jim.
What's going on, San Diego? John and Jim on a Thursday. It's going to be an interesting one, I can tell you that. It is going to be an interesting Thursday. So I woke up this morning, and you know when you have the little scratch in the back of your throat and you're like, uh-oh. Well, when you work in radio, having a scratch in the back of your throat, that's a problem. When you work in radio and you do a radio talk show, that's a problem. But it's more of a problem when you do a radio talk show solo. So look, we're going to try to just gut this thing out today. Me and you. We're going to try to gut this thing out. I'm going to try to go for as long as I possibly can. Of course, John, he's back east, so he's not here today. Brent's behind the scenes here. But we're going to try to do this as long as we possibly can. And I had a good show lined up for you, and I still do have a good show lined up for you. So just stick with me, all right? Today on the show, Darnay Tripp's going to join me. Chris Hodge is going to join me, talking Vegas at 4:30. We also have the wrap, my back page, a couple giveaways. So we have a lot planned for today's show. But we start with, look, we are now going to have to move past this Mike Schilt retirement, quitting. We're still going to talk about it. I still have, thoughts on it later in today's show. But as far as who the next Padres manager will be, well, today we got our first, I think, real candidate that has caught my eye. And I'm sure it's caught a lot of Padres fans' eyes as well. Because is there a sexy hire out there right now with the names that I've seen up to this point? Not really. Bruce Bochy's the sexiest name out there, but the Padres are not hiring Bruce Bochy. Let's just make that abundantly clear. The Padres are not hiring Boch. It's not happening. Especially as long as AJ Preller's around. The Seidler Bros, whatever you want to call them, I don't even know really who they are or how they operate. But the name that we heard about today, it's a very interesting name. Everybody will know this name. Albert Pujols. So Mike Rodriguez, he's a very credible reporter. He tweeted out this morning, according to my sources, the San Diego Padres have called future Hall of Famer Albert Pujols with interest in interviewing him for the team's manager position. My first thought, that's the guy. Without knowing anything, to me, Albert Pujols, that's the guy. Why? Because, one, he brings immediate credibility to the clubhouse. Immediate. Dude's a future Hall of Famer. Okay. The Manny and Tatis, they have no choice but to look up to Albert Pujols. He'll walk in there with credentials that all the other guys that are on this list don't even have. They're not even sniffing these credentials. So Albert Pujols, a name out there that is now linked to the Padres, along with others like AJ Ellis, Ruben Niebla, right? Ryan Flaherty, a bunch of other, maybe Nick Hundley. But for me, Albert Pujols, he stands off the page. He definitely, to me, is a name that I'm like, oh, because I didn't think I would feel this way for this manager search. I didn't. I thought they were just going to go vanilla, and they still could, by the way. I'm not saying this thing is over. I'm just, pointing out that Albert Pujols' name has emerged and that the Padres are interested in Albert Pujols. And I think it would be a really good fit. I think it would work out great. I think it would be the guy that I would choose when I'm looking at all the names on a list. He's the name to me that I would pick. But does Albert Pujols want to manage the Padres? Would he want to manage the Padres? I know that the LA Angels are a team that has reached out to Albert Pujols. I know that maybe other teams that, are looking for a manager might reach out to Albert Pujols. This would be Albert Pujols' first time managing in his career. So first time manager here in San Diego. But I wouldn't feel like I felt with Jace Tinger. Like, who? I would at least know who Albert Pujols is, along with every Padres fan, every single player. I just think Albert Pujols fits a lot of stuff that they're looking for. And I think that bringing him in here would, on just, initial first glance, would be a home run. Now, the adage and the saying is like, who cares about winning the press conference? Go out and win baseball games. And I agree with that. Albert Pujols, if they hired Albert Pujols to be their manager, that would win the press conference, no doubt. If they hired AJ Ellis, that's not winning the press conference, right? Albert Pujols, that's the flashy name. But I think he's more than just a flashy name. I really do think that Albert Pujols, especially with how analytics are nowadays and how the front office would get involved in lineup construction, even though this past year it was reported that Mike Schilt had full autonomy of the lineup. I think that, a first-time manager, if you're going to bring a first-time manager in, bringing in a former player of Albert Pujols' stature, that to me, I think, would check off a lot of boxes. And I'm not saying that it has to be this flashy hire. Like if they hired Ryan Flaherty tomorrow or AJ Ellis and they went out and won baseball games, doesn't matter. Who cares about the press conference? But I also think Albert Pujols could do the exact same thing. And maybe better. It's just, I think it matches up a lot of things that you're looking for. Because the number one thing when you become the Padres manager, or at least one of the top things that you have to do when you become the Padres manager, is you have to have Manny Machado on your side. You have to make sure that you don't lose Manny Machado. You have to make sure that clubhouse stays together. You have to have respect of the players. And when they brought in Bob Melvin, he had the pedigree, the resume, right? Players respect him right away. You bring in Mike Schilt. I know Mike Schilt never played baseball in his entire, adult career, adult life. But he came from the Cardinals, made the postseason multiple years, won 90 games, manager of the year. So with that, you have the respect. And then if you bring in Albert Pujols, like how could this clubhouse not respect Pujols? There's no way I envision a clubhouse or reports coming out that says Albert Pujols has lost the clubhouse. Like that's not, I feel like, what would happen here at all.
There's some things that I like about this. One, he would almost serve as like a de facto hitting coach too, because he would be good at getting hitting advice because it's Albert Pujols. The only thing I would be worried about is you would have to get like this experienced bench coach to pair with him to kind of hold his hand, so to speak, just because he doesn't have really any experience. But I don't know. It's like I brought up earlier this week. It's one of those things where do you just want to go with the same retreads that are just always in the coaching pool of, the Ron Washingtons and, stuff like that, to where it's just like every time we're looking for a manager, it's like these same 5 dudes are always in the job pool. It's like, or go with someone unknown that, like you said, at least Pujols is going to have instant credibility. He brought up Jace Tingler. It's like, sure, they can have some respect for Jace Tingler because he, quote, played, but, Pujols actually played. So, what he has to say is going to carry so much more weight than some of these guys that, just had minor league careers, but not necessarily like actual pro career. And
the other thing that I really like a lot about Albert Pujols is, if your entire organization is, hell-bent and the goal is to win a World Series, well, guess who knows what it takes to win a World Series? Albert Pujols. right? He won a World Series before. He's played in many postseason games. He's had postseason success. Now, it's not like they're signing him to be a player on this team, but I just think that if you go out and you were to sign Albert Pujols to be your next manager, I don't see any negative to doing that right now. I don't see any. With Ryan Flaherty and AJ Ellis, I'd be like, okay. I mean, Ryan Flaherty was here, and if y'all remember, Ryan Flaherty was like the offensive coordinator, and the team's offense sucked. It was awful in 2023. AJ Ellis, okay, doesn't really excite me. I don't know much about AJ Ellis, but at the same time, he could be a really good manager. He could be a really bad manager. I just think that if you were to give me these options, if you were to say, hey, look, we got AJ Ellis, we got Ryan Flaherty, we got Ruben Niebla, we got Albert Pujols. Who are you picking of those four? And maybe throw in a mystery candidate. I would choose Albert Pujols like in a second. No questions asked. I think that the respect that he would bring, the experience that he would bring, because they want to win a World Series. Albert Pujols has won World Series. I think he would gain the respect of Manny instantly. How could he not? And I just think that there's on first glance, there's really no downside. Now, look, Albert Pujols could come in here if the Padres were to hire him as manager, and he could be awful, right? He could be awful. It could be a disaster. But I'm willing to bet on it. I'm willing to bet on him if he truly wants to do this. If he truly wants to become a manager in baseball, then I would probably go after him. Now, also, there's another name out there. We'll talk about this later in the show as well. That's out there, Yadier Molina. That's another name out there because Yadi said today that he wants to, coach in baseball, and so that's another name. But as of right now, according to the reports, the Padres interested in Albert Pujols. I'm all on board. And look, there's a chance that anybody they hire could be awful. There's also a chance anybody they hire is great. Doesn't matter who it is. They could hire Brent, and Brent could turn into the best manager in baseball.
I just need a good bench coach.
Yes, you do. But I just think on first glance, I see Albert Pujols' name, and I'm very intrigued by it. I think it checks off a lot of the boxes that the Padres would be looking for in their next manager, especially coming off a manager that led this team to back-to-back 90-win seasons. I also think Albert Pujols wouldn't be, a thin-skinned, hothead like Mike Schilt. I don't think that. I think Albert Pujols would have as many names in his Rolodex as possible to call to get advice from on how to be a manager. So to me, if Albert Pujols is a serious candidate for this opening here in San Diego, I would hope that the Padres take it seriously and go forward, because to me right now, I think that's my number one candidate on the board. Of all the candidates the Padres have that have been reported, I think to me Albert Pujols would be the number one candidate on my board, mainly because of the Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis factor, and the experience as far as, getting through a postseason, winning World Series, the way he can relate to the clubhouse, to the players. I think it would be great. All right, coming up next, more on the Mike Schilt quitting here in San Diego. Also, as I mentioned, we'll get into Yadier Molina. He's wanting to be back in coaching, or at least he wants to start his coaching career. And also, lockout is definitely coming in 2027. We have to prepare for it. All that coming up next on John and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, listen for a chance to win 4-pack of tickets to Hallow Scream at SeaWorld San Diego this year. New horrors awaken with 5 haunted houses, 8 terrifying scare zones, hidden speakeasies, and the shrills of coasters after dark. Every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday now through September 2nd. Halloween fun for the whole family. For a limited time, kids go free with paid adult ticket. Visit SeaWorldSanDiego.com for more information. So just a little update on how I'm feeling. It's not looking great, everybody. It's not looking great. Again, like I said, to start the show, woke up this morning and felt that little tickle in the throat. And it's
right on cue.
Right on cue. And, John's not here, obviously. He's back east visiting his parents. And so, doing a solo show, it's going to be a little difficult. But I'm going to try to stick this thing out as long as possible. No guarantees, but here we are. And until then, we're gonna just keep chugging along here. So, looking at the Padres ahead for next year and their biggest off-season needs. Because look, this past year was an extremely important year because the team is going to look really different come 2026. I believe that. I believe that this offseason is going to be critical to maintain the success of this team because the roster is going to look really different come opening day in 2026, mainly the pitching staff. Do I think they're going to re-sign Michael King or Dylan Cease? I do not. I don't. And that's a bummer because I think Michael King, when healthy, is a frontline starting pitcher. And, this past year, sleeping wrong, ruined his season, basically. Whatever bed he slept on in Atlanta, he needs to go and burn it because it ruined his season. Let's be real here. Him sleeping wrong ruined his year. And I don't know how it's going to affect his free agency, but hard to think it didn't affect it a little bit. So Michael King, Dylan Cease, not going to be returning. Luis Ariz, not going to be returning. And honestly, I'm 100% cool with that. Kind of over Luis Ariz. And so you look at the starting rotation and you're like, uh-oh. You don't even know what's going to happen with you, Darvish. Hopefully, honestly, he retires to save that money. And what are the Padres going to do with your rotation? Are you going to go out and are you going to try to re-sign Michael King? Well, it's going to cost you over $100 million. I can tell you that. You're not going to try to re-sign Dylan Cease. I feel like the organization is done with him. And if Yu Darvish retires, then that's 3/5 of your rotation that you have to replace. And the guys that's going to be on the rotation next year, the guys that are going to be in the rotation next year, one's coming off Tommy John. The others are Randy Vasquez, JP Sears, and who else, right? Nick Pivetta is your number one pitcher going into the 2026 season. Are you going to convert some relievers? I mean, look, for me, I know the Mason Miller convert to a reliever conversations out there. Convert to a starter conversations out there.
I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not a fan of that either.
I think that's going to equal instant Tommy John surgery. It's you might as well just, do the surgery now if you're going to ask him to do 5+ innings of 104 mile per hour heat.
I think Mason Miller is more of a weapon and more valuable to your team as a closer than trying to convert him into a starter. Could be wrong. Now they do need starting pitching, but at the same time, I just think Mason Miller as your closer is such a weapon that you really want to take away his 104 mile per hour fastball and turn it into a 98 mile hour fastball because as a starter, he's not going to be pumping 100 every time.
Because if you do that, you're pretty much going to take what makes him special and then make him not special. You're just going to make him like,
he could be special, but he won't be as special as he would be as a closer.
Yeah, no, but it's one of those things where if what got everyone's attention in the postseason, besides the 27 strikeouts in a row they got, and I know it's not 27, but is that he was throwing 104 miles per hour. If he just goes to throwing a consistent 98 all the time as a starter, there's probably 30 starters in the league that can sit there and just throw 98 consistently.
Randy Vasquez was throwing 98 this past year.
That's what I mean about how what makes him stand out is that he can throw that hard. So then when you condition him to not throw as hard, then he just kind of becomes like another guy.
So the rotation to me is the number one concern in this offseason. No doubt about it. You can tell me the offense is the number one concern because of how bad the offense was this past year, but they're not signing Schwarber. So stop thinking that. They have the core here as far as their lineup goes. The rotation is the problem. You do not have a full rotation right now. You need pitching. And going into this offseason, that's got to be on top of AJ Preller's list. Like, they're not going out, guys, and getting Pete Alonso. They're not getting Schwarber. They're probably not getting Murakami or however you say his last name, Murakami. It's not happening. So stop thinking it's going to happen or stop talking about it. Yeah, they obviously could use Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber. Never going to happen. Not in a million years. Guaranteeing it. Not happening. Stop talking about it. They need pitching. They need starting rotation help. That's the number one need this offseason. All right, coming up next, we'll dive back into the Mike Shildt story, the drama with Mike Shildt. Also, later this hour, is Yadier Molina a possible candidate for the Padres as well? We'll get into that. All coming up next on John and Jim on San Diego Sports 760 and live on the iHeartRadio app.
This report is sponsored by Straight Talk Wireless. Game 3 of the NLCS between the Dodgers and the Brewers is about 45 minutes away. First pitch is at 3:08. It's going to be Aaron Ashby going for Milwaukee and Tyler Glasnow going for LA. Game 4 of the ALCS between the Blue Jays and Mariners is set for 5:33 tonight. It's going to be Max Scherzer going against Luis Castillo. Thursday night football tonight, we got the Icy Bowl matchup between Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco. That's Steelers versus the Bengals. Kickoff for that one is set for 5:15. Don't let data limits hold you back from being a gift master of the family group chat. Switch to Straight Talk Wireless and get real unlimited data on Verizon's 5G network. Straight Talk available at straighttalk.com or Walmart.
All right, back here on John and Jim. So the Mike Shildt story, like I said yesterday, is a story that won't fully be resolved, maybe ever. Like it may never be resolved. We may never know why Mike Shildt decided to quit. Was it because he was pushed out? Was it because his coaching staff couldn't deal with him anymore and he didn't think that he could, please everybody, so he just said enough's enough? Was he fired secretly, but they turned it into retirement to have him save face?
Maybe we'll find out in Schilte's tell-all book coming soon to bookstores near you.
This guy is going to be back in baseball eventually. There's no doubt about that in my mind. At what capacity is he back in baseball? If he's hired as a manager, this whole thing was completely BS. If Mike Shildt never manages ever again in his entire professional career, then I would tend to lean more towards this being, probably more truthful than not. So the story still has to play out. And, it makes you continue to wonder with the article that Kevin wrote the other day. Basically, the second Mike Shildt quits, you start seeing everybody in that organization saying how awful Mike Shildt was. Why wasn't this reported in season when it was happening? Why wasn't it reported before Mike Shildt decided to quit? Why is it being reported now? Why are these individuals in this organization, over 20 sources, as Kevin points out, why are they coming out now? Like, oh, Mike Shildt's gone. Let's say how much of an a-hole he is. Now, I never liked Mike Shildt. I didn't. I was sick of Mike Shildt, to be honest with you. But I could live with it and deal with them because they're winning baseball games. I couldn't stand the guy. From very early on in his tenure as Padres manager, I thought he was a giant phony. He was really hard to get behind for me, really hard. The one thing that kept me, going with Mike Shildt and kind of, being like, okay, they would win baseball games. But honestly, like, I'm not going to miss the guy. You're only going to miss the guy if the Padres don't win. And that's a real thing. That's a real possibility that could happen. But, for Mike Shildt to end his tenure with the Padres this way, it just will never make sense. And then the $4 million, like, he didn't take $4 million and he walked away from that. It's like, none of it makes sense still. And none of it will ever make sense. Was Mike Shildt a good manager? Yes. Is this team potentially screwed going forward now that Mike Shildt's not the manager? Nah. I don't think so. I'm not going to say Mike Shildt was the greatest manager ever in baseball, because he's not. He was a good manager. He wasn't great. He was a good manager. He had regular season success, not much postseason success. The guy was incredibly difficult to deal with, incredibly difficult to listen to, kind of an a-hole, extremely thin-skinned. But hey, he won baseball games. So, I see fans out there saying that who cares? He won baseball games. And yeah, I could get behind that. Mike Shildt returning for a third season. I wasn't going to sit here and say they should have fired Mike Shildt after their postseason failures once again. I actually thought that he'd be back, and I was in favor of it, just because, hey, how could you doubt a Mike Shildt team winning less than 90 games? Because guess what? Never happened in his professional career ever as a manager. They've always won 90-plus games. So yeah, was he a D-bag? 100%. But he won. And it's just interesting now that, like, all of this stuff's coming out after the fact. Like, all we heard was how much the players loved him. He's behind his players 100%. I didn't know that he was having these blow-ups with his coaching staff. I didn't know that the coaching staff was essentially laughing behind his back, watching these press conferences, seeing how thin-skinned Mike Shildt was because he can't answer a question from Derek Togerson or AJ Cassavell or Dennis Lynn or Marty or AC or Darnay. I mean, I did hear some whispers that there were people behind the scenes that were pretty high up in the Padres organization that would roll their eyes at Mike Shildt. But again, you deal with it if you win. And for Mike Shildt to claim that, he's leaving because of all of the distress and the death threats that he received and his mental well-being, like, okay. But also, if the Padres really wanted to keep him, they would have tried to make it work, and they didn't. The second that Mike Shildt retired, you heard nothing. You heard nothing from the org. You got one tweet. I didn't see anything from any players. It's like he just disappeared in the wind. So going forward, this story, the Padres will move on. They'll find a new manager. Mike Shildt will do whatever he wants. But I'll be watching to see where Mike Shildt lands and what he does. Because that will be very telling. If he immediately gets back into baseball next season, I'll be like, interesting. Thought you needed time off. If he becomes a manager again, this whole thing is BS. It just is. All right, coming up next. Yeah, we're probably going to get a lockout in 2027. We'll talk about that coming up next on John and Jim on San Diego Sports 716 live on the iHeartRadio app. All right, back here on John and Jim. Little show update for you. I tried. As Brent said, the old college try. So we're going to go until 3:00 today. Just a heads up. If you're listening right now, we're going to go to 3:00 today. I just can't make it through the show today. I wish I could. I tried, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I have literally, if you're watching me on YouTube right now, I have 2 cups of tea right here in front of me. I got one that's like ginger and turmeric, and the other is like honey and ginger.
Chug, 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 chug.
And they were extremely hot, so like I'm waiting for them to cool off. But even that's not working, and I know that if I continue to do the show, it is going to be brutal. And I'm trying to get better so I can do tomorrow's show. So tomorrow's show is a little bit up in the air because John is not returning until Monday. He's back east. He's visiting his mom. So he'll be back Monday. But for today, we're going till 3 p.m. And hopefully I can get better because these vocal cords, it's not doing great.
Yeah, I've been there before. I've had
brutal,
a time where
dude.
I lost my voice completely, where like I would like, try to scream, and all that would come out was,
yeah. I can talk, but like I can just feel the oncoming cough / like itchy throat / it's just not working. So
look at the bright side. At least you're not sneezing.
Oh my gosh, dude! If I was sneezing, that would be a problem. Like, hey, I have to leave because I can't stop sneezing. No, when you work in radio and you do a radio show, the worst thing possible is to lose your voice or at least not be able to talk. So anyway, just a heads up, we're going till 3:00 today. Hopefully we'll be back tomorrow, but it's up in the air as of right now. So there will be a lockout in 2027. I do think that's going to happen, unfortunately. You know, we got lucky with no real big lockout a couple years ago. But at the same time, this one kind of feels different. Jeff Passan was on a Barstool podcast. I think it was on PFT the other day. And he was talking about, this Dodgers Brewers series and how this could determine if there's a lockout in 2027.
You have set the stage that this is not just the Brewers versus the Dodgers. This is the future of baseball as we know it in a proxy war, because whoever ends up winning this series, the other side will use this when the MLB goes to a lockout and fights for a salary cap. And they'll either say, well, yeah, you can build a championship roster with no money like the Brewers, or the Dodgers are unfair and they essentially spend so much money no one can compete. I read the article and I was like, I read the premise. I was like, there's no way this is true. And then you laid out the facts. You're like, it might not be right, but this is what's going to happen. So did people respond to you from MLB being like, you're right, like we're going to use this, like we're watching this closely?
Everybody pushed back on the premise, actually, saying that it was too simple, which made me think actually it's kind of spot on.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I think the important part of this is to separate what happens privately with what happens publicly, and to figure out where ultimately they intersect. So what's happening privately in any collective bargaining negotiation is that the sides, it's very simple. They trade ideas, right? So we're going to offer you this. You're going to say yes or no. You're going to come back and offer, and then we're going to wind up meeting somewhere in the middle. But it's all the stuff that happens publicly, I think, that informs their positions on that. What I mean by that is you guys are in Chicago, so it's a big market. In Los Angeles, Dodgers fans, or in New York, Yankees and Mets fans, like big markets, they have it pretty good. They have a lot of money. Even if the Cubs aren't spending what you think they should, it's better than most. But it's the people in Pittsburgh and people in Cleveland and people in Kansas City where I live and people, in those smaller markets that look at the state of Major League Baseball right now and ask themselves, can our guys compete? Like, even if they are extraordinarily good at what they do, like the Milwaukee Brewers front offices, can they compete in a sport where the Los Angeles Dodgers right now have a $500 million payroll and the Brewers are having $125 million? Like, is it fair? Is it right to have one team that has 4 times as big a salary as others, or does the sport need a salary cap? Now, I'll sit here and tell you the players will not accept a salary cap. So if there's any flaw, like the premise that my story has here, it's that we're starting from a point where this is not going to happen. So anything Major League Baseball does to try and cajole the players into taking it is going to be met with anger. And yet Major League Baseball, if the Dodgers go and win again this year, they have a credibility problem with a large swath of their fan base that wonders, is this sport fair?
So I've always been on the side of this. Are the Dodgers ruining the sport of baseball? No. You know who's ruining the sport of baseball? The Pittsburgh Pirates, Tampa Bay Rays, the Sacramento, Oakland, Las Vegas A's, the Miami Marlins. Name me another bad team in baseball that doesn't spend any money. Colorado, the Rockies spend some money. They just suck. The Cleveland Guardians.
They went to the playoffs at least.
They did. But my point is this. In baseball, no one's like not making money here. Now, other teams are making more money, like the Dodgers and the Mets, right? Because of TV contracts. But the Pirates could go out and have a $180 million payroll. The Milwaukee Brewers could go out there and have a $180 to $200 million payroll. You know why they don't have a $200 million payroll, Brent? Because they choose not to have a $200 million payroll. They choose to not go out and spend money. So the owners of these teams in the quote unquote small markets, Peter Seidler back in the day made them all look awful. And that's why everyone didn't like Peter, especially in the small markets, because those small markets, those teams, those owners looked at Peter saying, bro, you're making us look bad. You can't go out and spend all this money in a small market because we're in small markets. And everyone's going to expect us to spend money like you. We can't do that. Oh, let me rephrase that. We don't want to do that. So for me, it's not the Dodgers that are ruining baseball. Shoot, I'm jealous of the Dodgers. If I was a Dodger fan, thank God I'm not. If I was a Dodger fan, I'd be like, kick rocks. You could spend money. You just choose not to. There's no salary cap. So the small market teams, they're not spending money. And to me, they are the problem with baseball. They are the reason why we potentially would go to a lockout, not the Dodgers, because these small market teams will look at the Dodgers and complain that they have all this money when they have money as well. They don't have all the money the Dodgers have. I agree on that point. No one does. But they could go out and they could spend. The Brewers are a really good story. Their payroll is $130 million. They could spend money. They just choose not to. All right, that's going to do it today. If you missed it, my voice is just shot right now. The tickle in the back of the throat starting to tickle. So we're going to go to Fox Sports Radio for the rest of the day. I'll keep you guys updated on social media if we're back tomorrow. But if not, have a great rest of your weekend. We'll be back on Monday for sure. John's back. I'll be back. So until then, have a great week, everybody.